Welcome back to another YouTube video, and what we are talking about today, kind of wrapping up our little series on tone. And today we are actually going to be talking about guitar scale length. So you might be asking yourself, what is scale length? Well, scale length, simply put, is the scale of the guitar. What do I mean by the scale of the guitar? If you take the guitar and you measure from the nut to the bridge, that is the scale length of the guitar. A more accurate way to actually measure that, because intonation varies on guitars, is to actually measure from the nut to the 12th fret and then double that. And that will give you the scale length of your guitar. So scale lengths are kind of all over the place, and they all serve a very specific purpose. I'm not going to say they're the most common, but most guitars bought today are going to be a 25.5 inch scale length. And like I said, the scale lengths are all over the place. I'm not going to say that's a standard, because it's not a standard. But you know, Fender Strats are 25.5, a lot of Ibanez's are 25.5, a lot of Jacksons are 25.5. Everybody makes 25.5, 25.5. I'm just going to say 25.5 scale lengths. So, what does scale length do? So let's start at a Fender Jaguar, which is a 24 degree scale length. Let's run a set of 9s on it, 9 to 42, tuned to standard E. On all of our guitars, our nut height and our saddle heights are the same on all guitars. All guitars are going to be tuned to E. So on a Fender Jaguar at 24 degrees, I'm obviously talking about a different damn video. At a 24-inch scale length on a Fender Jaguar. That's my movie voice, by the way, when I sit here by myself and narrate video clips. On a 24-inch scale length on a Fender Jaguar, tuned to E, and like I said, everything being equal, the string is going to be kind of sloppy. And you're not going to be able to pick extremely fast on it, because the strings they do have so much slack in them. The strings are going to move a lot when that pick strikes them. You're going to have a lot of movement on the string. So if we take that same set of strings and we go to a Les Paul, all right, we tune it up to standard. So you're going to have less fret buzz now, and you're going to have a little bit more string tension. So you're going to be able to pick that guitar a little faster. Now you're not going to be able to bend probably for 3 or 4 notes up like you would on a Jaguar, but you'll still have a tremendous amount of bend, probably 2.5, 3 steps if you just get in there and just freaking crank on it. We take that same set of strings, we move up to, let's say, a Fender Stratocaster at 25.5. All right, string is going to be a little tighter. We're going to be able to play it with our pick hand a little faster. Going to be a little more percussive on that, because the tension just keeps getting tighter as that scale length keeps getting longer. And we're still going to have some good bendability on it, but not like we are on the Les Paul. So now let's move up to, let's say, a Jackson Baritone guitar at 27 inches. And we're running the same set of strings. All right, now those strings are going to be incredibly freaking tight. They're going to require minimal amount of room to vibrate. Now, the cool thing about it is, for speed metal, you're going to be able to just crank on that string. The strings they're going to be tight. They're going to be super tight. So if you're into that, the speed metal, the fast playing, you obviously want a lot of tension on those strings, because you don't want that string to wobble around when you're striking it with your plectrum or your pick or whatever the hell else you want to strike it with. And you're going to be able to get crazy fast action off of it, because since the string requires so much room to vibrate against the fretboard, you can get those strings extremely close to the frets, because it requires minimal vibration to produce pitch. The downside is your vibrato and your bendability is going to go to hell. Those strings are going to be so freaking tight, you're going to be lucky if you can bend a half step on them. You go to a baritone, if you're like tuning down to B, that's when you want to go to a baritone guitar. Tuning down to B on a 25.5 scale guitar, you're going to have to go up tremendously in string size to maintain that correct amount of pitch. Because if you just throw a 42 on it and you tune it down to B, the strings are going to be just hanging on the guitar. and it's going to be nearly impossible to play. It's going to have tremendous fret buzz, and it's just going to be a nightmare to play. So you go with a thicker string to get the tension on it. Same thing when you go to a baritone. When you go to a baritone guitar, you'll start to go to a much thicker string to pull it up to tension. So the tension, and this is kind of where it gets hard to understand. When you're going up with a bigger string on a 27 as opposed to on a 25.5, you can still get the tension pretty much damn close to the same by changing the gauge of the string. Now, if you say, well, I want to keep a 25.5 and I want to tune down to B, I want to go with a much bigger string, well, that requires a bit of work on the guitar, because now if it's got a saddle, if it's not a locking nut and it's got a saddle, your saddle sits here and the string slots down into the saddle. Well, now when I've gone from a 42, which is probably what my saddle's cut for, 42 to 46, and now I'm running a 54, all of a sudden my string's going to be riding on top of the saddle. So now I've got to widen that saddle to get that string to fall down into there. But I got to make sure that whoever's widening my saddles is doing it correctly. Because when you're cutting into that saddle, if you cut into the bottom, obviously it's going to drop the action onto the fretboard. Now all of a sudden your guitar's going to be buzzy as hell. And no way to fix it is to put a new saddle on it. Now that's not a big deal, and people do it. Zach Wild, he doesn't tune down to B, but he uses big old fat E strings on the top. And that's where he gets all that girthy bottom end that he's got. He's just, hell, he's playing the damn bass string on his low E. The thing's freaking huge. And that just comes down to playing style. But if you're a serious metal guitar player and you want to play just some serious rockin' ass speed metal, you can do that on 25.5. But the best option is to go to a baritone guitar. Now, you might be saying, well, I can do that, and I can go to a baritone guitar, but now the strings on the bottom, because of the gauge I'm running, the strings on the bottom, they're not as movable. They don't bend as much. Well, that is true. That is where multi-scalar guitars come in. The cool thing about a multi-scalar guitar, and now those are normally used for, 7 strings sometimes, but 8, 9, and 10, definitely going to be multi-scalar. I don't think I've ever seen one on maybe somebody makes one on a 6 string. I'll have to check. Maybe Keisel made one. I'm not sure. I'll have to check. But you're really not going to find that on a 6 string guitar, because you just really don't need it on a 6 string. But when you're getting into, the 7, you'll find it, but the 8, 9, and 10 strings guitars, that's when multi-scalar comes in. Okay, well, why do we have a multi-scalar guitar? Well, that's easy. When you're on those big old fat strings on the top, all right, and let's go back to our baritone, all right, our 6-string baritone for a minute. We're on those big old fat strings on the top. Well, the strings on the bottom generally are pretty much bigger too. So we lose that bendability, that easy vibrato that we put on the guitar. So when you go with a multi-scale guitar, you can run those big old fat strings on the top because the scale is so much longer. Usually that scale will be 27, 28 inches on the top, but the scale works like this. So, and you'll see the frets will fan, and then you'll see that the bridge will be fanned out also. So you're running that long scale on the top so you can get the correct tension on the strings to get them up to pitch. But as you come down, and let's say we're at 20, we'll go 28 to 25.5. As you come down and it comes down to 25.5, now you can run the standard light gauge strings on the bottom, let's like 9s. And you still keep that tension that you like, but you also still have, the flexibility on the string to do the big bends and all the vibrato and stuff like that without sacrificing anything on the top end. And that's why they make multi-scalar guitars. So you're not sacrificing one part to compensate for the other part, if that makes sense. When I have my Les Paul, when I'm playing my Les Paul, okay, now we tune down a half step. So Les Paul comes with 9s, tuned to E. All right, if I'm playing in standard, I turn those 9s, which are 9 to 42s, I actually will run a 10 to 46 because I like the feel of the 25.5 scale. I like that amount of tension. To me, a 9 to 42 at a 24.75 inch scale, there's just a little bit too much movement in the string for me, and I cannot pick it as fast. Now I can do monster bends on it, but I can't pick it as fast. But when I take my Les Paul and we tune it down a half step, which is what all my guitars are in, now I run 11s on that guitar because I want to get that tension back. So now I've gone down a half step on a short scale guitar. So if I was running 9s on a Les Paul down a half step, the strings would just be hanging off of that thing. And I don't mean physically hanging. I mean, they would still be straight, but they would just be very sloppy to me. And I would have to make some serious adjustments on my neck because as the string tension goes down, the string needs a lot more room to hit pitch. So it's going to vibrate much, much more, which means you're going to get a tremendous amount of fret buzz. So if you're a big metal player, Les Paul actually is not the best guitar for you. Now you can make it work. Like I said, Zakk Wylde makes it work. But it's actually not the best guitar for you. If you're a speed metal player, that is not the guitar for you. You'll want to go with the 25.5 with a heavier string, not a much heavier string, because then you start getting into all kinds of adjustments. But realistically, a baritone guitar is actually better for you because you're going to be able to run the tight strings on it and a heavier gauge string to give you that solid punch on the bottom end. So the baritone guitar actually is the better choice for playing serious speed metal. Now you can do it on 25.5, and I'm not saying you cannot do that. I'm just saying, with all things being equal, there are better guitars that suit your playing style and the tone you're after. Now I haven't talked about tone, which I'm going to mention that right here in just a second. But there is a scale for about whatever you want to do. But just because you love Les Pauls and you want to play speed metal, that is not the best guitar for that. You'll want to go up to at least a 25.5 or go to a baritone guitar. And like I said, it can be done, so I don't want a bunch of comments, oh, so-and-so plays speed metal. Can be done. Zakk Wylde, he adjusts his guitars, puts the big strings on them, has the nuts changed out and all that stuff. You can do that, and it will work. But to keep from having to do that, you can just go buy a baritone guitar and be done. Save yourself the headache on it. Now, the thing about tone. Back to one of our other videos, what we were covering about tone and finding that correct tone. And we talked about on the guitars how to, what the tone woods will sound like and how to match up pickups to those specific tone woods. Then we got into cabs and what tubes sound like and, how you can change tubes to adjust your tone. And of course, we talked about tubes and heads. And of course, we talked about cabs, but not so much. And we didn't get into speakers too much because there's billions and billions and billions of speakers. Spend the rest of your damn life going through speakers. So we didn't get into speakers too much. And of course, like I always try to say, tone is incredibly subjective. What sounds great to me may sound terrible to you. And what sounds great to you may sound terrible to everybody else in the world. So with that being said, if you do want just nasty bottom end on your tone, and let's say you've bought your guitar and your guitar, you like your overall tone, you got your cab, you got your head, but you just need that bottom end. Now, instead of taking your amp and cranking your bass all the way to 10 to where it's just going to get flubby and muddy as hell, at that point, go with a thicker string. Then you can start pulling that EQ back to here. Because like I've said in all the other videos, EQ is to shape sound. It's to shape your tone. It is not to give you tone. EQ does not give you tone. EQ, if it goes this way, it adds gain. If it goes this way, it removes gain. Now, it does shape sound, but it is not there to give you tone. It is there to shape the tone you have. That's the real use of EQ. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of people have great tone, and they do get it through EQ. But they get it through EQ on a specific amp that they're using for a specific tone they're going after. You take Brian May and his Vox amps. If I put him on a Mesa Boogie, I can crank those trebles all the way up to hell and high water, and it's going to sound nothing like that Vox. So after you get your tone set, then you start using your EQ to shape. Well, EQ happens everywhere. Like I said, EQ happens in your speakers. It happens in your woods. It happens in your pickups. It happens in the wood of the cab. It happens with your tubes. And EQ also happens with your strings. If you really like that deep bottom end, go with a much heavier gauge string. You can buy hybrid springs. Well, you can buy hybrid springs, but you can also buy hybrid strings for your guitar. Case in point, I run a 10 to 46, to where a standard would be a 10 to 44, or 10 to 42. And you might be thinking, well, 44 to 46 isn't that big of a difference. Actually, it is. I can hear it. It's just a little more girth on the bottom, and I can hear it. And I like that little bit of girth on the bottom, because I really don't like adding bass into my rig. On my Kemper, I've got my global EQ set at -2.5. So it pulls 2.5 bass out of my sounds across the board. Because I just don't like that real boomy, flubby bottom end. But I do like a little bit of a deep bottom end. So I run a little bit heavier gauge string. If I wanted a little more deep bottom end, then I would go up with another hybrid string, and I would go up to a 48, maybe a 50. At which point I would have to start making some adjustments on my guitar. Now, I don't want to go to a baritone because I'm the lead player in my band. And when you go to a baritone guitar, that 27-inch scale length to me is just a lot. That's just a lot. Actually, my favorite scale length is 24.75 on a Les Paul. I think the 24 on a Jaguar is just a touch too short. I think a 25.5 is actually, for me, a touch too long. Les Paul, to me, hits the perfect scale length. And it's not because of the fill. I like the shortness of that neck. Well, here's something else you've got to consider when you're looking at scale length. When you have scale length, and let's say we're at a baritone guitar, 20, whatever the hell it is. But as we bring that scale length in, what happens? Well, the frets also get shorter. Not shorter, they get narrower in between the fret wires. So, personally, I've never seen a 24 fret guitar at 24.75 or 24. I'm sure somebody's made one. I've never seen one. I wouldn't want to play one. Because, Lord, the fret space between the 23rd and 24th is going to be minimal. You won't even have enough room to get your damn finger on there to fret it. So 24 fret guitars normally start at 25.5. Now, when you go to 27, like a baritone guitar, then you can get, the 24 frets are easy to use, because you've got all that extra room on that 23rd, 24th fret, as well as all the frets moving down the fretboard. So a 27 scale baritone guitar, to me, is actually very easy to play because there's so much room between the frets. But I feel like my hand's 48 miles out here. So therefore, my favorite scale length is a 24.75. My favorite setup on that scale length is down a half step with 11 to 46s or 11 to 48s on it, because that gives me the same tension as a 25.5 scale guitar, which, like I said, is from here to here. This is the scale length. And being that this is a 25.5, obviously this is a 24 fret guitar, so I got 23 and 24. And honestly, I don't think I'd want to play a guitar with less than a 25.5 that was 24 frets. It would just be too damn small, because that's just barely big enough to get my fingers in there now. Now, that being said, I love my Ibanez here. It's one of my main guitars because it is so thin. I do like that. Boop. And you gotta admit, it's just a damn good looking guitar, man. For $1,300, this is a damn good looking guitar. But regardless, this is not my favorite scale length. I'm not a big fan of the 25.5. I do like 24 frets because there are plenty of times that having those 24 frets is very nice. And for the most part, everything here is pretty much standard fare. You add it, because you got to think, since we've added these two frets, all this room has to come out of all these frets. Now, granted, it's minimal. You got, what, an inch? Less than an inch there? Yeah, less than an inch. probably 3/4 of an inch that we've had to cut out of all these frets to add in these two. So with that being said, my favorite scale length is a 24.75 because I like the shortness of it, because I can get the tension on anything. And if you're playing a Fender Jaguar and you want to have the tension of a 25.5, because you're playing like, because it's got really light strings and they're wobbly and floppy, then all you do is you go up to a heavier gauge string, adjust the neck a little bit, and you can get this tension back, as opposed to a 25.5 on a 24-inch scale guitar. The cool thing about it, though, the necks are very short. I just love playing them because they're short necks. I love the feel. I don't feel like my hands, even on this, because I keep my guitar pretty much centered, and that's not far out there, but it feels far to me. Well, why does it feel far to me? Because I play this guitar a tremendous amount, and I play my EVH, which is my other main guitar, which is a 25.5. Well, this is pretty cool, and probably something a lot of people do not know. If you look at the room back here on this guitar, and this one's not the best example, but if you look at like a PRS or a Les Paul or a Jackson, look at all the wood back behind here. You can see where the neck is set in, blah, 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 25.5, yada, yada. But what most people don't know, and this is actually my main guitar, this is my EVH. Now, EVH, being the fact that he is just absolutely, the guy's a genius when it comes to guitars. Well, Eddie Van Halen, guess what? Eddie Van Halen, he loves him some 24.75-inch scales. Loves them. But he likes to feel the tension with the strings he runs better on a 25.5. But he likes the way a 24.75 plays. So what does he do? Notice I don't have all that room back here? And I think every manufacturer in the world should do this. I really do. He took the entire system and scooted it into the guitar. So now I don't have all that dead wood back here like I do on the other guitars. Honestly, I don't like that look. You just got all this room back here. I mean, hell, I could serve breakfast on that thing. Just throw me up some bacon and eggs and just set them on the back of the damn guitar because it's big enough to be a plate back there. He took all this, he moved the neck in. You can see how far the neck comes into the body, how little room I've got back here. He pulled the entire neck and the bridge into the guitar. So this guitar, even though it has the tension that I like of a 25.5, it actually plays like a Les Paul. Because the scale length is the same, but it's shorter from here to here, to where my Ibanez, it's out here a little bit. Probably, about another inch longer. And to me, that's a big difference, because I don't have big old long-ass gorilla monkey arms. I hope that kind of clarifies on scale length. I hope it didn't get too convoluted or too muddy. And just to kind of recap, Fender Jaguars are 24, Les Paul makes some 20, PRS makes some 25s. I think the PRS Santana, I think it's actually 24.5, but don't hold me to that. I've never actually played one of those guitars. Sure, it's a great guitar, but I've never played one. Les Paul's 24.75. Pretty much everything else in the world as a standard 6-string is 25.5, including my trusty EVH here. Is 25.5, and then you start getting into baritones. Now you can get into baritones that are actually not 27, 26 and a half. I think Solar makes it 26. Actually, I don't think it's 26 and a half. I think it's actually 26.4 inches. Their baritone guitar, which is kind of an odd size. Anyway, so baritones usually get up around 27 and they go up, from there. You can go up to 30 inches. Multi-scalar guitars will go, from like 25.5 on this end up to a 30 on this end. Like I said, you'll see them fan out. And that's obviously for the obvious reason. You're playing a much thicker string, a lot more tension on it. And because the scale is so different, the length is so different, the frets can't be the same on the top as they are on the bottom. So this has to be different from this on a multi-scalar guitar. And I hope that makes sense. So that's kind of it. Hopefully that kind of explains it. And like I said, you can adjust any scale guitar to any tension you want. Any tension you want. You can get a 25.5 tension on a Fender Jaguar. A few adjustments on the guitar, go with a much heavier gauge string. All right, and vice versa. I can make this very sloppy. I can go with an extremely light gauge string. I can take this thing and put a set of 8s on it. And to me, it's just going to be, the string will just be too floppy, and you can't pick on it. If you're going to pick really fast for metal, like I said, you want tighter strings, because when that, every time that pick strikes that string is going to move. Well, the more that string moves on that pick, then the more movement you're going to have to get that thing to roll off of that pick. So a very tight string is going to require very small movements on the pick for that pick to roll over the top of it. So I hope that kind of clears up scale lengths. If you have any questions about scale lengths, let me know. And if that doesn't clarify it, I hope I didn't just confuse you more. Because it's kind of one of those things to where, I understand scale lengths, so it's kind of when you know something really good and you try to explain it to somebody else, and they're just sitting there all glassed over with a dumbfounded look on their face, and you're like, what the hell don't you get, man? This shit is easy. Why don't you understand this? It's easy to you because you understand it. That doesn't mean it's easy to everybody else. So hopefully that clears up scale lengths. Like I said, if you have any questions, put it down in the questions. You son of a bitch, I did it again. Every time, dude. I just cannot seem to get that sunk into my damn head to save my life. If you have any comments, put it down in the comments section. If you have any questions, put it down in the comments section. My shoulder is killing me. Went to the gym today, started working out again after a year off because my job and moved away. And oh, by the way, my thumb's it's still uglier and shit, but all the black nastiness is going on. I hate my job. Nail. So it's slowly healing. About 2 more months, I should have a regular looking hand again. If you have any comments, put it down in the comment section. If you have any questions, put it down in the comment section. Please subscribe to the channel. And if there's something I left off about scales, let me know. Or about scale length, not scales. Let me know. By all means, drop me a line. Let me know, hey, dumbass, you missed something. Because chances are I probably missed something. But by all means, if there's anything that I missed, or if you have any questions, put it down in the comments section, and I will definitely answer your question. I love answering questions, even when I get the really bad, naughty questions that I get sometimes. I still answer. So, on that note, we're actually going to wrap it up this time. So please subscribe to the channel, and got a bunch of cool stuff coming up. And until then, like I said in the last video, get your tone right, play hard, and rock hard. Piss on that. Today, we get 2 double quads, baby.